huge operation involved more than $1.5 million worth of drugs, ranging from marijuana, cocaine to pills. CBS 17's Bridget.
Have you ever imagined that the well-dressed man in a suit, the one who graces your TV every night criticizing border policies, was actually the living shield for a Mexican cartel for 15 years? 400 pounds of fentanyl, enough to kill millions of Americans, wasn't hidden in some cartel bunker but stashed right inside the luxury mansion of a Florida gubernatorial candidate. At 4:57 in the morning, the steel door was blown open as the FBI rushed in and uncovered the shocking truth: submachine guns, $9.8 million in cash, and an unlocked phone lighting up with messages to the Juarez cartel boss. This isn't an action movie. This is happening in Florida right now. Are you ready for the full truth watch until the end? You won't believe how deep American politics can go. Cartel Tunnel. It was stored right inside the private mansion of a man running for governor of Florida. Right alongside tactical weapons, encrypted cartel ledgers, and shipment lists connected to overdose deaths across the state. This wasn't outside pressure. This was corruption built from the inside, protected, funded, and politically shielded for 15 years. Stick with me. You don't want to miss what's coming next. 4:57 a.m. Inside a sprawling luxury mansion on Tampa Bay, FBI and DHS agents flood the hallway like a silent wave. A motion sensor blinks once. Then the solid steel front door explodes inward under the breaching ram. In that moment, the perfect image of a respected Florida gubernatorial candidate shatters along with the door frame. In a side room, agents freeze in disbelief. Reinforced metal shelves hold 400 pounds of fentanyl, 160 pounds of methamphetamine, and stacks of vacuum-sealed cash, $9.8 million ready for transport. Along the opposite wall, 54 weapons, modified AR-15S short-barreled rifles, and compact submachine guns. This wasn't a drug house. This was a politician's palace. The kind of weapons cartel enforcers carry, not American politicians. But the most terrifying evidence was sitting right on the kitchen counter. Whitford's unlocked phone, glowing with active encrypted chats from the Juarez cartel, detailed shipment routes, bribe payments, and political protection that had been running for 15 years straight. The raid was over in minutes. The crisis it unleashed was only just beginning. 400 pounds of fentanyl inside a politician's home. For years, Marcus Dillon Whitford had crafted the perfect public image: a polished Democratic businessman turned politician, the rising star running for governor of Florida. Every night he was on television blasting Republican border policies, calling law enforcement efforts cruel and heartless. Behind that polished image was a machine funded entirely by the cartel. His entire business empire was a facade: 27 shell consulting firms, 3 bogus real estate trusts, and 11 charities that existed only on paper. Financial records laid it all out perfectly: small deposits starting in 2001 that grew into 6-figure transfers routed through Panama, Belize, and the Cayman Islands. After his arrest, Whitford admitted he had willingly protected a criminal network of escaped Venezuelan prisoners responsible for 1,900 drug shipments and hundreds of illegal weapons deals. Whitford wasn't coerced. He was the cartel's inside man by choice. The Florida gubernatorial candidate himself was the cartel's human shield. Imagine a man campaigning to run your state secretly, covering for a narco empire for 15 years. The files ripped from Whitford's laptop took agents to a place almost nobody thought could exist inside the United States. Deep in the Everglades, 18 miles west of Interstate 75, drones pierced the swamp fog and mangrove canopy to reveal a hidden compound. From the air, it looked like a few rundown sheds, but under infrared, it lit up as a meticulously engineered cartel fortress, its perimeter constructed like a wartime military stronghold. steel-reinforced walls topped with razor wire. 4 elevated guard towers manned 24/7 and 5 unmarked armored vehicles constantly patrolled the outer ring. Maritime-grade radar swept a radius of more than 120 miles, detecting any movement from miles away. But what was inside was even worse. Intelligence revealed 60 heavily armed mercenaries equipped with thermal optics and encrypted radios guarding 2 massive production floors where 42 hostages were being forced to cook fentanyl and methamphetamine. The victims came from 9 different countries, including 6 American citizens who had vanished months earlier. A cartel fortress operating like a full-blown military base right on U.S. soil. Just hours after confirming the Everglades compound, the federal government moved with lightning speed, showing how deadly serious the threat was. A closed-door emergency session was called in Washington, bringing together top brass from DHS, FBI, DEA, ICE, and military liaisons from U.S. Special Operations Command. Mission crystal clear. Take down the Juarez Cartel's command hub and rescue 42 hostages before they could be moved or silenced. At 3:18 a.m. under a moonless sky, the operation kicked off. Two Blackhawks skimmed just feet above the wetlands, rotors muffled to a whisper to avoid early detection. Below, FB, IHRT, DHS, tactical teams and DEA operators waded knee-deep through black water night vision goggles, cutting green tunnels through the dense sawgrass. First objective, blind the fortress. An electronic warfare unit flipped the switch on a high-power jammer, instantly drowning the compound's radar and radios in a storm of static. Inside the guard towers, cartel sentries frantically slapped dead handsets, completely unaware federal teams were already at the outer fence. At 3:29 a.m., the breach order came down. Simultaneously shaped charges detonated along the north and east walls. Steel barriers built to shrug off small arms fire buckled and peeled open under the synchronized blasts. Agents poured through the breaches, dropping into cover as the compound erupted in gunfire. Tracer rounds carved chaotic red arcs across the darkness. Cartel mercenaries fought like cornered wolves. One armored truck roared straight at the breach, its mounted gun hosing the entry lane with lead. But before it could close the gap, a shoulder-fired rocket slammed into the engine block, turning the vehicle into a roaring fireball and halting it dead in its tracks. Inside the walls, brutal close-quarters combat exploded. If right now you discovered the man running to be your state's governor was the one hiding 400 pounds of fentanyl in his mansion, shielding a cartel for 15 years and using drug money to buy votes, would you ever believe another for the people promised from him again? Federal teams swept room by room, clearing stairwells and corridors where the mercenaries tried desperately to regroup. The air thundered with suppressed rifle fire, barked commands, and the metallic clatter of spent casings hitting concrete. Despite the chaos, the agents advanced with iron discipline, pushing the enemy back toward the production floors. By 3:41 a.m., the tide had turned. One production hall fell, then the second. The last holdouts made a final stand near the southwest exit, but were overwhelmed in minutes. As the gunfire faded, rescue teams located the hostages, exhausted, malnourished, but alive. Some broke down crying the moment they saw American uniforms. Others were too weak to speak. They could only nod as medics gently lifted them onto evacuation stretchers. The search of the compound uncovered a mountain of evidence: 420 kilograms of fentanyl, 690 kilograms of methamphetamine, 1.2 tons of heroin, $58 million in cash and gold, and 117 firearms, many traced straight back to smuggling routes Whitford had personally shielded. In just 23 minutes, a fortress that had operated like its own sovereign nation was completely destroyed. But the real shockwave was only beginning to spread across Florida and the country. The The fall of the Everglades compound didn't end the threat, it detonated it. Within minutes of securing the site, federal analysts began ripping data from seized devices, burner phones, encrypted tablets, USB drives hidden inside false walls. What emerged was a map of Florida bleeding red dots. Safe houses, stash locations, cartel couriers, money runners, and political fixers, all tied to the Whitford network. The fortress wasn't the whole operation, it was just the nerve center. The tentacles stretched across the entire state. By sunrise, Operation Sunfall was green-lit, a full-scale statewide dragnet involving FBI, DHS, DEAA, TF, Florida Highway Patrol, and every local sheriff's office. Simple objective: dismantle every cell before the Juarez operatives could scatter. The first raids kicked off along the Gulf Coast. In Sarasota, a waterfront condo was breached at 6:14 a.m. Agents caught 2 cartel accountants frantically trying to torch their ledgers next to $4.7 million in shrink-wrapped cash. Both surrendered without a shot, but not every encounter went quietly. In Lakeland, a 3-vehicle cartel convoy made a desperate run for Interstate 4. Florida troopers rolled out spike strips while DHS tactical units boxed them in. A brief but intense firefight erupted inside a citrus grove. When the smoke cleared, 6 operatives were in cuffs and crates of ammunition slated for distribution were seized. By noon, the operation pushed north. In Gainesville, ATF agents raided a metal fabrication shop that had been converting civilian rifles into illegal full-auto weapons. They recovered 39 modified carbines, dozens of suppressors, and 1 Colombian armorer who quickly admitted he had been training Whitford's private mercenaries. Further south, in Fort Lauderdale, federal teams stormed a seemingly abandoned suburban warehouse. Inside, a mobile fentanyl lab still radiating heat from the overnight cook. 2 chemists opened fire from behind steel mixers but were instantly neutralized by flashbangs. The most dramatic takedown came near Orlando. A Juarez regional lieutenant known as El Rostro tried to vanish by boat through the chain of lakes around Winter Garden. Helicopters locked on. After a 14-minute high-speed chase, a DHS airboat cut him off. In his satchel, fake passports, encryption keys, and a handwritten list of friendly officials Whitford had promised to keep safe. In the first 18 hours alone, 79 cartel operatives were cuffed across Florida. Dozens more were identified through surveillance footage, financial trails, and confessions from the fresh arrests. For the first time in years, the Juarez network in Florida wasn't expanding. It was collapsing piece by piece under the full weight of the United States. When the last gunshot echoed into silence, the swamp fell unnaturally still. Smoke drifted over the shattered walls, flickering beneath helicopter searchlights. Medics moved fast through the rubble, tending to rescued hostages and stabilizing wounded agents. But the operation wasn't over yet. A separate low windowless annex sat half-sunk in swamp mud at the southern edge of the compound, still glowing with heat signatures on thermal scanners. Federal teams regrouped. Hostages were safe. Now they braced for what might be the final ambush. As they closed in, a hidden blast door hissed open and the last cartel gunman made a desperate breakout attempt. A ripping burst of full auto fire tore through the humid air, forcing agents to dive behind the collapsed outer wall. The mercenaries charged hard, sprinting for a concealed dock that led into the maze of swamp canals. They never made it. A DHS tactical element flanked from the right rifles, barking with surgical precision, cutting the escape short in seconds. Grenades sailed through the annex doorway, flashbangs popping like thunderclaps, and the final pocket of resistance collapsed under a perfectly coordinated assault. In 90 seconds flat, the last shooters were down, and the entire compound was under total federal control. Only then did the full weight of the night finally settle in. The political earthquake hit immediately and hard. Marcus Dillon Whitford, the rising political star and gubernatorial frontrunner, exposed as a 15-year servant of the Juarez Cartel, sent Florida into chaos. News helicopters swarmed the state capitol. Crowds gathered outside the governor's mansion demanding answers. For countless older Floridians who once admired Whitford's smooth speeches about economic revival, the betrayal cut deep, personal, and raw. Investigators fanned out across the state and almost instantly uncovered the first layer of rot: 31 business leaders, county officials, and campaign donors directly tied to Whitford's shell companies. Some had processed wire transfers that matched cartel shipment dates to the day. Others had fast-tracked permits for warehouses now obviously used as drug staging hubs. 3 police departments launched internal affairs probes after records showed cartel-loaded vehicles were waved through traffic stops with no explanation. One retired sheriff even admitted he'd been collecting consulting fees from a Whitford-linked foundation fees that mysteriously doubled every time a major cartel load rolled through his jurisdiction. The corruption wasn't just at the top, it had seeped into every corner of the state. For everyday Floridians, the pain went far beyond anger. It was a fracture of trust that cut straight to the bone. At town halls across the state, elderly residents stood with trembling voices, asking the same heartbreaking question: if the man who wanted to be our governor was working for the cartel, then who is left to protect us? Yet amid the chaos, one thing united everyone: the successful rescue of those 42 hostages. Their stories forced to breathe toxic fumes day after day, listening to armed guards pace outside their doors. Never knowing if they'd live to see tomorrow reminded the entire nation exactly why that raid had to happen. The downfall of Whitford and the Everglades fortress will reshape Florida politics for an entire generation. The war against drug cartels in Florida demonstrates that the FBI and DHS are deploying a powerful strategy combining intelligence, surveillance, and highly precise raid operations. Florida, with its geographical location close to the Caribbean and South America, is an ideal transit hub, making cartel activities extremely complex and sophisticated. The scenario clearly reflects the tension as federal forces confront criminal organizations with enormous resources, heavy armament, and vast networks. Such operations underscore the U.S. government's determination to block the flow of drugs at the gateway. The Marcus Dillon Whitford saga leaves a lesson carved in blood that every American, and honestly everyone anywhere, must never forget. The most dangerous corruption doesn't wear a ski mask and cross the border with a rifle. It wears a tailored suit, smiles on TV, and begs for your vote. When a politician is willing to turn his mansion into a fentanyl warehouse, a swamp into a narco factory, and fund his campaign with blood money, every promise of "for the people" becomes nothing but a mask. Always ask questions. Always follow the money. Always distrust the smile that's too perfect. Because if we stay silent today, tomorrow, your family could be the next victims of the poison that came from the inside. Integrity isn't an option. It's survival. And that's the truth they buried for 15 years. A Florida gubernatorial candidate turned the entire state into the Juarez cartel's personal playground, stashed enough fentanyl in his mansion to wipe out millions, and used blood money to buy his way to power. The Everglades fortress is gone, 42 hostages are free, 79 criminals are in cuffs. But the real question still hangs in the air. How many more Marcus Whitfords are out there right now smiling into TV cameras like nothing's wrong? Smash that like button if you believe every politician needs to be put under the spotlight. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss what's coming next, because the darkness has way more layers to uncover. Together we're dragging this into the light. Florida just started the fire, now it's your turn. See you in the next video.